what kind of impact do you see does the internet and all these social network kind of things have on the kids, on their social behavior, on their environment?
The impact, I think it's up in the air. I mean, we know, and Pew Internet Research has put out statements on the number of hours that an average young member of society, sort of the 8 to 18 level, spends on these tools, and it's enormous. I mean, they're spending essentially, if a child is awake, they're online. And then and for me too, and I think for many people, I mean, just walking down the streets of New York coming here, and I was watching people with their mobile devices. I mean, they're constantly connected. They're checking email. They're looking for directions. They're searching for information. They're interacting with others. So no doubt, this notion of ubiquity of connectedness is very close, I think, to being realized. And kids today are experiencing that. So I think that influences how they view information. They don't view information, as I did growing up, as you go to a place to find information, right? You go to a library, or you have to find the right journal article, and you dig through university journal archives to find that article. There is a sense where individuals today, and I see this in my own thinking at least, is I no longer expect to go to information. I expect information to know me. I expect it to come to me, and I expect, and Google's doing this quite well, to, based on my interactions with information, to have information and the systems that I interact with start to provide me with context-sensitive and relevant resources. Now, there's big privacy issues around this, with Google Latitude, for example, Foursquare and other services like that. But that's part of what's changing and what's morphing. So how does that impact youth in a classroom? I think it's too early to tell. I mean, there are definitely some psychologists that have suggested that the change is negative. It's changing our ability to socialize. It's changing, video games are changing how we interact with others, in some cases desensitizing us to violence. So there are negatives that exist, but there's no such thing as change without a negative disruption. So the real question isn't what are the negatives. The real question is what is possible with this, and then how do we minimize the impact of the negatives. And so I think that's when I think of how is technology changing, how is the internet changing learning. I think it's creating a global populace, learners who are aware of what's happening around the world in a much better sense than I did growing up, at least. My country consisted of where I lived, and yet my region, and yet now most of us have colleagues all over the world that we've perhaps only met via Facebook interactions or perhaps on Twitter or blogs. So in that sense, there is a growing sense of global citizenship that comes from the technologies that kids are using. There is one of the drawbacks, I guess, that needs to be addressed is there is a sense of distractedness that's a real concern. Sometimes deep thinking requires sustained periods of time, whereas continual distractions can sometimes have a negative impact. So those are the kinds of challenges that an education system needs to address, or try and find a meaningful way to navigate around, or to at least reduce the implications of those negative trends.